In the last hour, India's Air Accident Investigation Bureau has released its preliminary report into last month's Air India plane crash, which killed more than 270 people.
Less than 40 seconds. That's how long Air India Flight 171 was airborne before it crashed in one of India's most baffling aviation disasters in recent memory.
A passenger flight has crashed near the city of Ahmedabad in western India. Images we're getting from the crash site show many burnt buildings and extensive damage.
Now, scientists and investigators have finally uncovered the chilling truth, and it's more disturbing than anyone imagined. From hidden malfunctions to overlooked warnings, what they found changes everything we thought we knew about that tragic day. Buckle up, because the real story behind Flight 171 is finally coming to light, and it's not looking good. The Air India 171 crash. Ever since the unexpected crash, the takeoff of Air India Flight 171 from the Ahmedabad airport has reportedly been under intense scrutiny for early warning signs that would suggest that issues appeared before takeoff. And as expected, multiple experts have come out to give their take on what probably might be the cause of the crash in what was believed could take months to reach definitive conclusions, explaining India's deadliest plane crash in 3 decades. However, reports suggest that after proper findings and investigation, scientists have finally concluded and solved the mystery behind the crash. Now, the real question is, what exactly did they discover? And how valid is their claim? But before we dive into details of the report, let's take a quick look into the Air India Flight 171 before the crash and India's aviation response. Brace up for one of the most shocking revelations that will blow your mind. The 787 Dreamliner is a wide-body, twin-engine plane that was reportedly introduced in 2011. According to Flight Radar 24, more than 1,000 are said to have been delivered to dozens of airlines. The model has been one of the most prized airline because of its fuel efficiency and the fact that it's quieter than the types it replaced. According to the Aviation Safety Network database, the June 12th crash is the first involving a Boeing 787.
Today's incident marks the first time a Boeing 787 has crashed, and that's according to the Aviation Safety Network database.
Boeing has reportedly been in recovery mode for more than 6 years after Lion Air Flight 610. A Boeing 737 MAX 8 fell into the Java Sea off the coast of Indonesia minutes after taking off from Jakarta, killing all 189 people on board. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, also crashed after takeoff from Addis Ababa, killing 157 passengers and crew members.
In a second accident involving a Boeing 737 MAX 8. The Ethiopian Airlines flight crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis Ababa on Sunday. All passengers and crew, including 8 Chinese nationals, were killed.
Reports have it that Air India Flight 171 was scheduled to fly international passengers from Ahmedabad Airport in India to London Gatwick Airport in the United Kingdom. At 13:39 India Standard Time on 12 June 2025, the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner operating the flight crashed approximately 30 seconds after takeoff into the hostel block of BJ Medical College in the Meghani Nagar neighborhood of Ahmedabad. Believed to be the worst case of plane crashes in recent years in India, reports have it that immediately after takeoff, the aircraft began losing altitude while maintaining a roughly wings level and nose-up orientation. Sources claim that before the unfortunate incident, the flight crew had issued a mayday call reporting loss of power and thrust in an eventual crash that caused multiple explosions, and talking about the plane's capacity. The aircraft reportedly had about 230 passengers and 12 crew members, in which all but 1 passenger were killed. The crash also reportedly killed 19 other people and injured at least 60 more on the ground. Understandably, the crash of Air India Flight 171 has continued to generate significant questions about aviation safety oversight in India. It was gathered that the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau has remained notably silent about preliminary findings, raising concerns among industry observers. Under International Civil Aviation Organization Annex 13 guidelines, preliminary investigation reports are expected to be published within 30 days of any accident. While the AAIB still has several days to meet this deadline, it's under no obligation to report beforehand. The lack of early communication has sparked a degree of unease, with many speculating that the Boeing 787 suffered a loss of thrust soon after rotation. Many still hold the view that if catastrophic mechanical issues were discovered at this elementary phase, the AAIB should announce these findings immediately, although the lack of information is believed could still potentially discount such an outcome. Still, the silence has led some to question whether the investigative body might be selective in releasing information, especially if it could implicate the airline or India's aviation regulator. Another question that is being raised is, how long will the investigation take? While that is yet to be solved, reports have it that the investigation's pace may also be hampered by staffing shortages that have plagued the AAIB in recent years. A 2020 Air India Express 9 runway overrun investigation revealed significant manpower deficiencies, with several investigator positions reportedly unfilled by full-time staff. Should these staffing issues persist, this complex investigation is believed would encounter substantial delays and resource constraints unless the Indian government embraces support from overseas. Recent inspections by India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation that occurred after the accident is also said to have revealed alarming safety deficiencies across multiple Indian carriers. And recently, the country's aviation ministry's press release highlighted instances where aircraft defects went unrecorded and, when documented, repeatedly occurred without proper corrective action. These findings are believed to suggest inadequate monitoring and ineffective rectification procedures throughout the industry in India. However, amidst the questions and uncertainties surrounding the incident, scientists are reported to have finally found the likely cause of the accident. Now, the question is, what did scientists find, and could it have finally solved the puzzle missing? Buckle up, as this might just be the beginning of what is about to be revealed. Scientists' discovery and reactions. In a document released by the New York Times, scientists, which includes aviation safety experts, former pilots, crash investigators, as well as audio forensics experts, have reportedly reviewed the photos and videos from the June 12th incident and has therefore revealed key details about the disaster. In the report, the analysis suggests that the plane likely extended its wing flaps and slats before takeoff, used adequate runway distance, and took off from a typical point with a relatively normal initial ascent. It highlighted that within seconds of takeoff, the landing gear retraction process appears to have failed, and the plane's emergency power generator was likely deployed. Scientists say these failures indicate that the plane could have experienced a catastrophic loss of hydraulic, electrical, or engine power while airborne. While planes can technically fly with their landing gear extended, pilots typically retract it to reduce drag. In the crash video shot analysis from the rooftop, the landing gear truck is said to be visible in a front-wheel down position after liftoff. Scientists claim that the tilted position indicates that the landing gear retraction sequence was initiated in the cockpit as it would have been on any other takeoff. But the retraction appeared to have failed in the middle of the process. Mr. John Goglia, a former member of the National Transportation Safety Board, said that landing gear must be positioned correctly in order to fit back into the airplane's fuselage. He added that it appears the pilots activated the landing gear retraction sequence from the cockpit, but were not able to fully retract the gear, possibly because of issues observed to be electrical failure that caused a loss of hydraulic power. There were also analysis reports of how Air India 171 sounded during its descent. Reports indicated that the aircraft showed no visible swerve, but indications revealed that the plane may have experienced a loss of dual engine power after takeoff. Jeff Gazzetti, a former accident investigator for the Federal Aviation Administration, said that generally when planes lose a single engine, they swerve slightly to one side before the pilot or the aircraft's computer system corrects the issue. However, that is reportedly not visible in either available video of the crash. This suggests that the issues that may have caused both the engines to fail likely occurred at nearly the same moment, which is a highly unusual scenario. It was further revealed that possible explanations of a simultaneous dual-engine failure could include contamination of the fuel source into both engines or an issue stemming from an incorrect input of flight parameters before takeoff. However, reports say that investigators will be assessing these possibilities and more as they uncover additional details from the plane's black boxes in the coming days and weeks. In a reaction contained in an interview conducted by The Times, multiple experts also gave their thoughts regarding the crash. Majority of them said that the initial takeoff appeared relatively normal and that it did not seem as though the plane lacked necessary thrust from its engines on the ground. They argued that the analysis of CCTV footage and flight data shows that the position where the plane left the runway was in line with its 7 previous departures from the same runway. Captain Kishore Chinta, a former investigator with India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, calls it the rarest of the rare crashes. He told the BBC that as far as his knowledge can serve him, nothing of this sort has ever happened. It is a general belief that flight uses the usual runway length gaps in available flight tracking data that raised another question: whether the aircraft used the back half of the runway, which would normally be necessary to generate enough power for takeoff. At about 1:34 p.m. local time, it was reported that the aircraft was taxiing adjacent to the departure runway, but had not entered it, flight tracking data shows. 5 minutes later, around 1:39 p.m., data shows the plane airborne near the end of the runway, with no recorded points in between. A Times analysis of the CCTV footage reportedly shows that the aircraft's position on the runway when it enters the video frame at 1:38 p.m. would only be possible if it had backtracked on the runway. According to historical flight data, it was observed that the fatal flight's initial trajectory in the air is also somewhat typical and does not deviate significantly from the previous 7 Air India Flight 171 departures from Ahmedabad. Mr. John Cox, a former airline pilot, said that once the airplane gets airborne, the initial climb rate looks pretty normal. As scientists' latest discovery continues to raise questions and arguments, there remains a serious concern about the effect of the Air India 171 flight crash and how it can affect the future of India's aviation system. Hold on, because the best part is coming up. Immediate and future effect on India's aviation system. Recent inspections by India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation that occurred after the accident have revealed alarming safety deficiencies across multiple Indian carriers. The country's aviation ministry's press release highlighted instances where aircraft defects went unrecorded and, when documented, repeatedly occurred without proper corrective action. These findings reportedly suggest inadequate monitoring and ineffective rectification procedures throughout the industry in India. Perhaps most concerning were discoveries of improperly secured life vests and a lack of adherence to defect repair procedures as laid down by the manufacturer. This has reportedly raised fundamental questions about regulatory effectiveness, carrier compliance, and the timing of these inspections following the Air India 171 crash. The DGCA's sudden increase in operational inspections has also uncovered irregularities in flight time limitations at Air India. It is believed that such interventions by the regulator represent too little, too late, especially given the tragic loss of life. The pattern suggests systemic oversight failures that may have contributed to what is quickly turning into an aviation safety crisis in India. At the moment, India's aviation system is reportedly at a critical moment, as the Air India 171 accident comes at a particularly challenging time for Air India's transformation under new private ownership. After decades of state control and mediocre performance, the airline is believed to finally have the opportunity to compete effectively and establish itself as a major international player. The new corporate identity and investment strategy represent a clear break from the airline's troubled past. However, this tragic accident threatens to undermine Air India's rebranding efforts and growth ambitions. The airline's ability to expand internationally is believed to depend heavily on maintaining strong safety credentials and regulatory compliance. Any perception of compromised safety standards is believed to significantly impact the carrier's expansion plans and passenger credibility. It was reported that the investigation outcome will likely determine whether Air India can successfully navigate this transition period. It is also believed that a thorough, transparent investigation that addresses systemic issues could actually strengthen the airline's position if relevant findings were acted upon and implemented. In the same way, a flawed or incomplete investigation could damage both the airline's reputation and India's aviation sector credibility. Reports suggest that the relationship between India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau and the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, both being government entities, has raised concerns about potential conflicts of interest in the investigative process. Aviation experts believe that any credible investigation should remain free of external influence or favoritism. However, sources argue that this neutrality could be compromised if the government attempts to balance transparency with its desire to protect the reputation of India's aviation industry. It was noted that the AAIB has previously demonstrated its capacity for rigorous and critical analysis, as seen in its detailed report on the Kozhikode CCJ runway overrun. That investigation was praised for its thoroughness, even though it revealed uncomfortable truths about key industry stakeholders. However, reports now indicate that the scale of the current investigation and the international attention surrounding it has placed unprecedented pressure on the Indian government to contain reputational damage. Analysts claim that the outcome of this inquiry could significantly influence India's standing in the global aviation community and may even shape regulatory responses from foreign authorities. Some observers warn that if the investigation appears weak or compromised, it could lead to restricted operations or stricter oversight imposed by international aviation bodies. On the other hand, sources caution that a comprehensive investigation that exposes regulatory failures could also slow the industry's momentum and threaten future growth. It is widely believed that these implications extend far beyond Air India, potentially affecting the entire Indian aviation sector, which has experienced substantial expansion in recent years. Aviation insiders have speculated that the uncovering of serious regulatory gaps might lead to retaliatory measures, such as the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration downgrading India to a Category 2 safety rating. Such a move, according to experts, could hinder Air India's ability to expand services to the U.S., both on existing routes and new ones. Officials have emphasized that such measures are never applied lightly. However, some reports suggest that if the FAA were to act, the situation could escalate into a tit-for-tat exchange, potentially leading to similar restrictions being imposed on U.S. carriers operating in India. In such a scenario, with demand already outpacing capacity, ticket prices would inevitably skyrocket. Analysts believe that the only real winners in such a standoff would be Gulf carriers, who could capitalize on the situation by charging a premium to absorb the diverted traffic. Industry observers argue that the AAIB now stands at a crossroads, balancing domestic pressures on one hand and the global aviation community's expectations for transparency and accountability on the other. At this point, it remains to be seen which direction the investigative body will ultimately lean toward. Did scientists' discovery do justice to the question bothering people's mind? Do you think the Indian air industry could have done better to prevent the crash? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the following video showing.